toys and TV shows, comics and collecting and superheroes. There's no end to the useless stuff they know. But don't call them geeks, they're just regular Joes.
Welcome to the Regular Joe's podcast. I'm Dave Pisani.
I'm Barry Kay.
And I'm Todd Pleasant.
And Dave's drinking.
You know, I'm drinking. You know what Arrow's still going on. You know, there's an episode on tonight.
2-hour finale tonight, too.
Tonight is the, ultimate finale. Tonight is everyone stands around and cries about Arrow.
He died
for
in
2
thing.
hours.
I know.
2 hours.
They were bummed out. And now there's more going on.
Did you watch Supergirl and Batwoman this week?
I did. I watched, not this past Sundays, I watched last Sundays. Supergirl was actually pretty good.
I actually found that I think I texted you guys, I like the fallout from Crisis better than Crisis.
Oh, yeah, Crisis was horrible.
I like that the stuff that they're dealing with now, and in Batwoman it's very interesting. But I like the stuff that they're dealing with now as a result of this. So,
what was interesting in Batwoman?
She's basically she's got two versions of her sister right now.
Okay, yeah, I didn't see the follow-up. I saw her come in, and that could be interesting. But what's interesting, so Supergirl totally is like, oh my God, I'm dealing with all this stuff. Spoilers: Lex Luthor's here, and blah blah blah, and the Brainiacs, but Batwoman's episode was like, we're back to the Alice thing, and then there's a surprise at the end. So I'd rather have them have dispensed with the back to the Alice thing, although maybe they needed that to see that there's a difference.
I will say what they did in the next one's the first of a two-parter, but I'm really hoping they Thomas Riker her. I really do. I hope they end up keeping the second sister.
Well, that'll be interesting. That's not one of the topics today, but I just was thinking about that.
Thank God.
Like,
after
watching Arrow?
After the last show we did about Crisis, I don't think I can handle any more DC TV right now.
Yeah.
So. I got to say, I think the Batgirl episode, the Supergirl episode was one of the better ones this season. So.
I think so too. And I think there's...
And it's totally... And Megan Rath from...
Supernatural?
Whatever that... Being Human.
Being Human, right.
And she's also in... Oh, you don't watch it. Hawaii Five-0 this season. You know who she is, though. The Brainiac guy's her brother. That's why she was... I totally... As soon as I saw her, I'm like, oh my God, yeah, of course that's why she's on.
I know who she is. We met her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was nice.
I actually liked not to go too deep into this, I liked the multiple Brainiacs. You wouldn't have picked up on this, but one of the Brainiacs who's wearing the comic book Brainiac outfit going back to the 50s. Okay? You know, the purple with the yellow belt. And
it looked... that was pretty specific in the yellow boots.
And the yellow boots. And then when, in the end, Brainiac is now the color with the hair color was supposed to have been all along, and not some weird blue thing. So they did fix some stuff, which is good.
That's interesting. Anyway, well, we're not talking about that, but so we're talking about Picard and all things Picard today, because it was the last episode. If you haven't watched it, I suggest you go watch it. Pay your $5 and go watch it, or at least $5 a month for the past 20 months.
Yeah. Or start now and watch Picard, and then choose to keep it or not.
Watch Discovery too. So let's go a quick random. Todd, you said you had something that's quick.
Yeah. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier will be on Disney in August. Disney Plus in August. So,
cool.
Really psyched to hear this because, again, Hawkeye's delayed. Sounds like Loki started shooting, which means it's a ways out there. And then, we know about the Kenobi stuff. So it's just good to know something is actually on the board.
And this isn't one of mine, but I was just reading today that Vision, the actor that plays Vision,
Paul Bettany,
was saying that
Mrs. Jennifer Connelly.
Yes,
Mr. Jennifer Connelly.
He was saying that he loves what they're doing with WandaVision show, but that it's really out there, and he's shocked that they're taking such a big risk. So
They say a trailer will be dropping very soon,
Yeah.
which is gonna baffle a bunch of people. So
There's no risk. I surmised today by reading about streaming services, none of these are necessarily really about subscriptions at all.
yeah.
But that's a whole
the
nother
risk
story.
there to me isn't about subscribers. It's about, is it just going to be too off the beaten track for mainstream audiences to embrace it?
Barry, I think you and I, who both like Legion, are probably going to embrace this. So, yeah.
All right, Barry, what do you got?
I got two quick ones. One, and for you guys, I put this in this folder, Dropbox, or in this show episodes folder. But there's a magazine called the International Cinematographers Guild. Their February and March 2020 issue just dropped as a downloadable PDF, so anybody can go get it. On page 44, there's an article about The Mandalorian, about how it was shot. Some of these images had appeared online last week, but really in-depth article with the cameraman and with the directors and all this stuff that talks about the fact that while we thought a lot of that stuff was shot on location, it was actually shot in a soundstage with giant screens that made the actors look like they were out on location. Pretty cool. I haven't read the whole thing yet, but it goes really deep, and I think, Dave, you'll probably really get a lot out of it as well. But
Yeah, and that's a lot of what they did with Solo, too, right?
well, in Solo, they were wrapping sets with screens, and they did that with the cockpit of the Falcon. This is like taking that to another level, where they're actually, building, ships and putting creatures on a soundstage and having the entire environment be projected behind them to make it look
That's
three-dimensional.
crazy. You would never know that
No, definitely not.
watching that.
So that's
Interesting.
cool, and if anybody who's interested, just search International Cinematographers Guild, and you'll find that it's downloadable for free. The only other thing I wanted to mention, I know we texted about this, but Clone Wars Season 3 trailer is out. It starts in February 21st, I want to say, but somewhere around there, and it looks really, really good. So
I watched an episode of Clone Wars today to maybe see if I could bear with it and actually watch.
what I'm I'm looking forward to it, really looking forward to it. As I understand it, there's 12 episodes coming. It's 3 arcs. 2 of the arcs were released previously as animatics. So the last arc, which is the final 4 episodes, which really wraps up the whole story, is kind of the only truly new material that they're releasing. So I was a little disappointed to hear that, but I never watched the animatics, so it'll all be new to me. But for people who really, really dove deep into all the supplemental material that were on the Blu-rays, I think 8 of these episodes are kind of out there in one form or another already.
Oh, interesting. I haven't seen those. And, I'm really looking forward to it. I liked it a lot. Dave, it takes, I would say, probably 5 or 6 episodes to get into it and get you stopped thinking about the animation. But
I am starting with the return of Darth Maul, trying to get through episode or season 6, I guess.
Yep.
You said to skip 5 and see what happens. I'll see.
yeah,
They're literally 20 minutes.
I think
They're
what I said
20
was
minutes.
watch
I watched
5
today.
and skip 6, not the other way around.
Oh, maybe I downloaded them.
Okay.
But they're literally 20 minutes with 3.5 minutes of credits.
Yeah.
Because it takes that many people to make those things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
'cause-
used to do 3 of them while I was working out.
Season 6 was what they called the Lost Missions, and that was all stuff that they had half produced before they canceled the show. So they finished them and released them on a Blu-ray. But Season 5 is more of a cohesive season with a couple of clunkers thrown in there.
I did like 6 in that it felt like just little kind of more self-contained kind of snippets of things. You didn't have to work so hard to tie things together, and it just seemed like an attempt at closure for a bunch of things.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Don't get me wrong, but I was just saying for Dave to sort of at a jumping on point, I don't think
It would
Season
not
6
be
is
the ideal jumping on point. Yeah.
Why? Because I'm difficult?
Because we want you to watch the new season, and that might not inspire you to do it.
Right.
I'm difficult.
Yeah, that too.
You could say it. Okay. I had a thing, this is completely different, but I was reading a post on one of the Facebook groups that we're on, and so people are like, what Mandalorian helmet do you want to buy? So apparently EFX and Anovos have announced those helmets, and they're actually shipping. So companies known for a very long lead time are actually had announced it not that long ago, and they're already shipping. So that's interesting. I guess they're trying to jump on.
They did say that when they put them up for pre-order that they were going to ship shortly, but they've said that before.
Yeah.
And
people have said they're receiving both of those already.
Okay.
So they licensed it, but not exclusively. That's really interesting.
Which is...
Well,
yeah.
but one of them is
one
licensed
a lamp
as a...
or something like that? Is it
The Novos one is licensed as a costume piece, and the EFX is licensed as a replica prop.
Yep. Okay.
Which is ridiculous.
It is ridiculous, but that makes a lot more sense than they licensed it to both.
Yeah. So there's those two. There's also some fan-made ones that sound pretty good. A lot of people are like, "Oh, you should buy this." You know, both of those are like $650, $700, and that's a lot for a freaking helmet.
Yes.
I get it's got a lot to it, but I'd be curious about some of these people who are making them. Some come as a kit that are like finished up to primer stage. I mean, I don't think that thing would be, if you could get the right like sort of metal process, that wouldn't be that hard of a project to do. So
no, and I'm not even sure that the real one is metal. I think it's painted to look like metal.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure it is. There's no way it's metal. But I think for me, I think it'd be cool to have one, but not at $700. I don't think.
Yeah.
No.
So.
Now, I like helmets. I don't have a ton of them. I don't have any super duper expensive ones, and like, you know, the Hasbro Black Series are almost good enough. They're nice, but they're not. I mean, you can see where they've got battery compartments and speaker grills and stuff. Like the $300 range to me is like the sweet spot. If it's $500, $600, $700, $800, I'm not going to buy it.
Yeah. So I'd be
been there.
I
I used to have a bunch of Master Replica helmets that I got rid of all of them.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see what people. I mean, there's a couple of names that have come up multiple times of like this one's is better than anyone else's, and there's a guy who makes a ton of like Boba Fett stuff that's making them. So
Yep.
I got to poke around about that. But
Yeah, I'm weird about a lot of that stuff too, because I tend to like licensed things, even though I have plenty of fan made things and, you know, garage kit type stuff. But when it comes to Star Wars stuff, I kind of lean towards licensed stuff.
Okay, snob.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
Hey, we all have our quirks.
We're totally not into licensed Star Trek clothing. I'm not buying anything that doesn't come from China anymore.
That's right.
Okay, well, that was random. Guess what else is going on? Anybody? Anybody? I'm drinking.
Fanboy Collectibles? Are you trying to make a
That's
segue
right.
here?
Wow,
I didn't have a
that was
segue.
kind of a segue fail. I got to say that.
You know what I was waiting for? Never mind. I'll talk about that later. So there's
You know it's a
couple of
good
things.
place to buy licensed products?
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
If you're a licensed snob, a good place to buy licensed products?
Yeah.
Yes.
I was waiting for that, but let's not go there.
I wasn't going to go there.
There's a sideshow Lando bounty hunter that looks pretty cool. You haven't seen that bounty hunter from Jedi.
Yep.
There's a very cool sideshow premium format Robin. Todd, did you see that? Where he's
I did. That's actually really. I mean, if you look at the detail on that, there's interchangeable heads, and a bunch of stuff. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's very cool. There's a ton of diamond statues, like everything, like pretty different price ranges, but on the lower end, there's a ton of those. Check those out. And this was interesting. Chronicle, which is sort of this retailer / company who makes stuff. They have these bronze-looking Picard and Pike busts, which is interesting. I mean, it's funny because like Picard has a Shakespeare bust, and this looks like something that looks sort of like that, the same sort of size.
Yeah,
and
I gotta say,
I've
been thinking about the Picard one. I think that's very cool.
It's a really good likeness.
It's a good likeness, and I think that could be interesting. So I'm definitely thinking about that.
I think it's cool that there's different kind of stuff. We see a lot of, not that it's not all awesome, but we see a lot of hot dogs and pops and stuff. But here's something that's a little different. I thought that was kind of cool.
It's a little unique. The other thing that's interesting is the choice of Pike for the other one.
Maybe that's just, it's
it's
a
like
licensing thing.
But it's probably a licensing thing. But still, I would do like Picard and Spock would be interesting.
But you would think that of all the modern, and I know we're in the middle of a commercial, but you would think of all the modern Trek stuff that's gone on the last couple of years, Discovery versus Pike, who was. I think it looks cool. I agree with you. I think it's. You would think that they would have gone for a different character, but I think it looks great.
We'll see more of them. Is my guess.
Okay, I will tell you, I take this as a very positive sign.
Me too.
That if they're licensing stuff with this character, they got plans. So
yeah, so that's good. So anyway, check those things out. fanboycollectibles.com. Check them out at the store in Newtown, Connecticut. Tell them the regular Joe sent you. Okay, so Picard. I'm sure we all watched it at various times over the past couple of days. How do we want to do this? All right, between Last Jedi and the Rise of Skywalker, where do you place it?
Just other universe. We're going to leave it.
Sorry.
As I'm sitting here wearing my Ryan Johnson Sucks T-shirt.
Yeah, no, we're going to address this entirely on its own. Okay.
If you would have realized, if you go back and listen to episode 216 or whatever number it is, and now that we got Barry to be wearing not only wearing but
anyways,
Ryan Johnson.
We're not talking about that universe. We're
awesome.
So
the other Star universe.
Yeah. This is a very different Star Trek. It's very different, but this is one of the things I will say, jumping out ahead, this is very much what I want to see. I want to see other corners of this universe that we haven't seen. I want to see, this is, we've never seen a Star Trek show that wasn't like ship-centered one way or another, that was, character focused. There's a lot to explore here. And
I think that we've been on Earth more in this episode than in any of the series combined. Well, really,
now there were a few episodes where Picard was home.
Enterprise. They spent a fair amount of time on Earth, but I think if you, but yeah, like I said, the fact that this is the character is the important thing, and the ship is whatever ship ultimately is the secondary thing. I like it. I think there's, like I said, there's a lot of stories left to tell in this universe. And one of the things that I've talked about this a lot over the last several years is this is the breaking of the blockade where they can now move past the point in history where they were stuck. They were stuck at, 2387. They couldn't do anything past that because the rights were owned by two different, Paramount and then CBS owned the rights to separately owned rights to the separate properties. And even though the Kelvin timeline began with that, Spock came out of the Prime universe into the Kelvin universe. There isn't a book, there isn't anything from the Prime universe that addresses anything past 2387 until this thing here. The books all stop in 2386 and nothing moves forward beyond that point. And this is, realistically, I think the year 2400 or somewhere on that line. I think that's great, and it just kind of opens it up to telling a lot more stories.
I liked it in that for a couple of reasons. It is a whole different, pace. Discovery was, not that this is not complicated. There's definitely complications to this, but this felt, it's nice. It's more condensed. This feels like the Winter Soldier versus Avengers Infinity War. It's a tighter story. It's not sprawling yet necessarily.
It's hard to say definitively based on one episode, but it's
but at least the way it started. And I like sort of there's a little mystery that has to unravel that hopefully won't be super complicated. And there's a lot of, backstory that I think it's hard to look at it from a perspective of, I know all this stuff, so I wonder what someone else thought. I watched it with Mark, and I did have to throw him a little like, who Data is. He never really watched a lot of, I threw him a couple of things, but he didn't have to do a lot of explaining because it was all pretty much there. It's very much. I feel like it's a mystery series right now, as opposed to in
some ways,
science
and
fiction.
it's one of the things that but I also feel like they built this series around probably the strongest actor ever in this series, and
wait, Shatner in this?
Yeah, he is. I mean, even older and angrier, and carrying around all this baggage, he's still the same character. He still feels like the same character. You see the weight of things on him in the same way. I think they did a really good job with that. I'm glad they took their time with this. We had 18 months of run up to it, pretty close to that, I think. If you read the stories, this is essentially the third concept for the show. And I like what they've done. I really do. And I think, and I'm okay with this. I mean, let's face it, this show has probably a 94-year-old protagonist, somewhere between 92 and 94. They can take their time getting to where they're going. They're going to introduce the other characters as they get to them. I'm glad they didn't have to rush everything into a pilot episode. And name check everybody and do all that kind of stuff. I like that you're getting breadcrumbs. And
you could have seen Seven and Riker and everybody.
Yes, what I was kind of afraid of, and it's like, oh, remember me?
I didn't want it to be the all good things let's go get the band back together kind of thing.
That's right, and you know what? And if they meet these people organically as they go along, and it's really like we've already been told we're not going to see LaForge or Worf in this season, but when they come up with a good reason to run into them, they will. And at least LaForge. I think that's great.
I think you guys liked it more than I did. I didn't not like it. I enjoyed it. I kind of want to see where it's going, and you're going to hate me for this. Patrick Stewart seems really old to me.
He does seem really old. I do agree with that.
The dude's 79, okay?
No, I know he is.
I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but he does, could he be playing older?
It feels like
he's playing a 94-year-old.
But is he really that way? I mean, he does seem very old. And if
again,
he's playing
the way he did, I've seen him in interviews. The last two things we've really seen him in was playing older Charles Xavier in Logan.
Yeah.
And now older Picard. Okay? So, yeah, I think they're making him a little older. And he's definitely a lot livelier in interviews. He moves faster, and he's got a lot more enthusiasm for things. I think he's playing the age.
That scene when he got blown off his feet and all that, I was like, I legitimately felt frightened for the actor watching that, and I know it's
saw that. I was like, okay, I would not survive this. It's fortunate that in the 24th century.
Medical technology being what it is in the 24th century.
Well, I was going to say is that there's a much better healthcare system. So, yeah.
No, I liked it. I don't want to give you the wrong impression. I enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm just looking to see where they actually take it.
Yeah. It was nice that it was definitely sort of this unraveling sort of character / mystery, but with some interesting action, and there was some pretty good action in it too. Which
and we haven't even been dealt the characters yet that are going to do the heavy lifting as far as action is concerned. So, I'm like I said, I'm intrigued. I was very, very pleased. I think I've seen it 2.5 times now. Like I said, I really like it. My favorite villain, I would say villains, my favorite race in that whole series, in all the series, has always been the Romulans. Since I was a kid, I've loved the Romulans. And I feel there's so much to explore there. And, the Klingons have gotten a whole lot of attention over the years. I think this is a really good direction to go in because there's it's such a deep vein they can tap into. And I think that's really cool. Plus, you've got a great story that was dealt in as a throwaway in the Star Trek film, in the J.J. Star Trek film. Basically, their sun went supernova. They are scattered. The survivors are scattered far and wide, and this gave us gave us his part in this. And I love the idea. I love the Dunkirk reference. I love the idea that he's trying to lead this armada to basically rescue, billions of people from certain extinction. And
it's interesting. And then, this does tie into one of the short treks, this Children of Mars. They really dropped a major sort of point in Star Trek history, in this, that, with obviously spoilers. So Mars blows up at the hands of, I guess, androids or something, and they've banned androids. That is like a huge sort of, chunk that they've carved out in what goes on in Star Trek.
Right.
To, right into this story or before
and that was one of the things that I struggled with a little bit, is that clearly a lot of time has passed since the end of Next Generation. And there's this big gap in time where, for a long time, Data was the only synthetic, close to human type of robot that we had. Somewhere between the end of that and this, there were large numbers of them, and then they attacked Mars, and now they're banned. So, I'm wondering if they're going to go back and fill in any of that, because...
Yeah, I think they will.
Well,
but one of the things is we did see during the Next Generation, there were a lot of people, Maddox, who's referenced in here included, who thought that, they should be synthesizing more beings like Data. Data himself tried to do it.
Well, I like that they brought the Daystrom Institute in, because we've heard about that before, but we've never seen it. And
yep.
Yeah, I thought that was cool. And then you brought there's a lot. It's not. I guess they're Easter eggs, but B4 is in there, and I love the Earth stuff. While we've been on Earth, and I guess it was Enterprise, but seeing sort of the Next Generation / Voyager / Deep Space Nine, which is 700 episodes of those shows. Seeing that Earth where you see Starfleet and all that, I always wanted to see more of that kind of stuff.
I agree.
I thought that was cool.
As we've talked about before, I always wish they'd gone ahead with the Starfleet Academy series. And, I love the idea of going to his archive and the stuff that he had in the archive. I thought that was great.
Yeah, that was cool.
And some obscure stuff, too. Having a model of the captain's gig, as well as the Enterprise D. That was kind of cool. A lot of it wasn't just the obvious surface level stuff.
I thought that was the Stargazer there was a model of in there.
Yeah. But
you had the batleth on the wall. You had the Klingon knife on the wall.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, going back to the opening, that opening shot, very much like the first episode, beginning of the first episode, going, in the window from outside, pulling in, going in the window. And the other thing too is they could have. They made it. It was very clear it was a dream and not a memory. Well, to nerds, I guess, because Data was wearing a uniform he never wore on that ship. But it was like they made it very dreamlike. I thought it was really good.
So it's interesting. Picard dreams about himself and Data's in different outfits, and his face is a lot wider.
Well, again, I think they did a fairly good job.
I think they did the absolute best they could without CGing him.
Yes. Yeah. And they really could have, given the amount of footage that they have. They could have worked with.
They totally could have done that. It's interesting how, I guess, based on popularity too, but how close Data and Picard were. Obviously, he had second billing in those last one or two movies. He was
too, I think, the breakout character. But I think the other thing that, and this, I was explaining Star Trek to someone recently, and I was talking about the significance of these two characters, and it was before we both watched this episode. But one of the things I said is, you started with that series with an android, okay, who wanted to be human, and then a captain who was doing everything he could not to be human, okay? And, and both of these people over time became more human as a result of their interaction with each other. Picard softened and Data became more, learned his lessons as he went along. And I think there's the other thing too is, other than like Tasha Yar, which you got to go back to, like they knew each other for 15 minutes. He was really the only significant loss of a crew member in terms of somebody that was close to him. And I think that would continue to haunt him. So particularly in the fact that this is a being who is essentially immortal, and yet he sacrificed himself, and it's so who knows what our nightmares will be at that age, but or dreams or nightmares. But
so it's interesting that they'll slowly work people in for however long they're in.
Yep.
We know Riker. I wonder who else they'll work in. I know people seem to have hated him, but I wouldn't mind seeing Wesley Crusher. Like, what is that guy up to?
But he disappeared, to another dimension.
Did he?
No, but he was back for the wedding in Nemesis, and bizarrely wearing a Starfleet uniform at the wedding in Nemesis. But you got to kind of look at Nemesis and squint.
He went. I forget the race he went off with. It wasn't a Q, was it? It was somebody else. But
no, it was a Traveler. It was a different
the Traveler,
kind
and
I
he
don't
went off
even remember that, to be honest.
to explore the galaxy or whatever.
Yeah, but again, it would actually be interesting to see him show up at some point. The one character no one has mentioned is Beverly Crusher. I mean, I don't know what Gates McFadden's doing. We saw her at a show a couple of years ago, I guess. But everyone, they've talked about Geordi. They've talked about Worf.
Well, didn't the actress Gates McFadden recently go through like a cancer scare or something?
I don't know that.
Yeah, I think there was something.
Did they? They were in All Good Things. They were married, right?
They were
Yes.
divorced. And
Divorced.
in the novels that have continued since Nemesis, which ended in October, they published the last one, and they basically said they're closing that chapter because now continuity follows Picard. They've been married since a few years after Nemesis, and actually have a child. So I
guess replicator
it's the
technology.
future. It's the future. You can do whatever you want. But anyway, so I don't know how they'll address her character at all, but they haven't,
Did you guys? I didn't automatically realize the two helpers, his two staff. I thought they were Vulcans at first.
That's
No,
my
no,
biggest
they're-
problem with the way that they portray the Romulans now is that they look, and I understand why they've made them, look the way they do, but they look. It's hard to distinguish a Romulan from a Klingon.
But he has the head ridges and she doesn't.
They should have been a little more prominent.
They should have been a little more prominent, but this is the first time we've actually seen two Vulcans together where one did and one didn't.
Romulans.
That's actually
See,
a
even you
thing.
got
They've always
confused.
gone, it's either been one way or another. And he's got the kind of V thing inset in his head, and she doesn't. So
Because that's what I'm looking at. I'm like, there's no way Vulcans would be servants to humans. There's just not possible. And then I realized that there were Romulans.
right.
They should have made that a little more obvious.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I mean, that was.
but
my
I think
only...
as we go along, I mean, these are refugees that he took in, and yeah. So,
I could be wrong about that health scare, by the way. I'm looking it up real quick, and I'm not seeing it. I thought I had heard that, but I don't want to put that out there if it's
About
not
what?
true. About Gates
the health
McFadden.
scare.
oh, okay, yeah.
I might be wrong about that.
Interesting that the other one I made some notes, but so at the end of Nemesis, which I rewatched, and God, I can't really. You kind of got, if you really want to tee yourself up for this, it really is the last time he's the captain. So
and it does tie in with the whole. I mean,
kind
I
of
hate to
does
say
because,
it,
like I said,
and I
the
didn't-
last thing in Nemesis is Data, singing, trying to sing Blue Skies, and it opens with that. This opens.
It
with
probably is necessary watching, and I haven't watched it in years, but it's got Romulans in it.
Yeah.
It's really the last stuff we know of with Romulans and Data.
Okay,
and
but necessary
really is.
watching or just necessary to know the basic plot line?
well,
You don't have to
I'm
rewatch it.
saying
I
to someone who
rewatched
hasn't
it.
seen
I
it.
will say it did not get better. It was it's kind of sad as the last film in that series. I got to say there's things in there that I did not remember that it was probably good to remember, but good to see again. But boy, they threw everything in that movie and nothing hit, nothing connected. They tried to make an action movie out of it. They tried to do all these things that just I look at that movie and I like Jonathan Frakes, who turned down directing it. Really wish he had not turned down directing it. So
Who did direct it? Anybody? I know the guy's name.
yeah. But anyways, he turned it down because he was worried about basically getting pigeonholed as a Star Trek director.
Well,
And
the one before it wasn't that good either.
No.
and he
no,
did
it
direct
wasn't great. But again, these things not being good also has a lot to do with the studio. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
they gave some of these movies like the budget for 6 episodes or something like that. It was
Yeah.
not,
Yeah, a lot of the reason they greenlit some of those movies was because they already had standing sets and they didn't have to pay to build
right.
them.
And then they could
Not
they
a
could
good reason
repurpose
to make
bunch
a
of
movie.
things.
Yeah.
And plus, they could then reverse them and reuse them. Every Star Trek show airing during the Next Generation movies got extra sets, like Voyager got extra sets, and all these things got extra sets because they made things for the movie, and then vice versa. There's I read a thing online years ago that basically showed all of the things that were reused in both places, and it's like Janeway's cabin
that's
is
funny.
now this, and this is now this, and it was kind of funny. But
I was gonna watch Nemesis, but it's not on anything. I don't have it. It's
yeah.
Oh, I own
thought
all of it. I just don't like watching that one.
I don't
Yeah,
have all the movies.
It's like I said, I'm
Wait, you
kind of
have a
glad I
drive
went back
that has
and
it on
watched
it,
it,
Dave.
but it's not better than it was.
Your Memory
So-
Alpha drive has it on there, Dave.
Oh, you're right. I didn't even realize
Yes.
that.
Well, I
was
can acknowledge the
downstairs.
existence of that, but yes, you have a copy of that, Dave.
I may go back and watch it.
So
I think it's worth just to refresh yourself. So
so do you want to?
I forgot about it.
I don't know. I'm making changes on the fly, but maybe we should just go through and talk about some of the other material that they've released that ties into this, rather than do it
yeah,
later.
I think they're definitely trying to kind of give this some legs. They preface this with a short trek, which is Children of Mars, which really had the least story of any of the Star Treks, the short treks that we've seen.
It was a Mean Girls episode.
This was, I mean, and I actually will tell you from my personal exposure to young girls that this was not inaccurate in how they presented it. But I will say this really was like a pre-credit sequence kind of thing where
Yeah,
it was just
totally.
it just teed up this, but it also gave you, I mean, to say 92,000 people died, okay, in this event is one thing as a throwaway during Picard's interview, but to see the significance of that in those 2 kids were basically seeing their parents die, was something else entirely. And I think it gave it a little more kind of weight to it.
I agree with that. But I wish they'd say, "Hey, what? You have no indication." I don't know where you'd get it that you should be. This particular episode ties into something. I don't know where they would.
Yeah,
put
I mean,
that,
I
but-
think it was helpful knowing, in advance of the Picard episode that, Mars was attacked. But other than that, and I know I've said in the past, I don't like having to do homework to watch things. And, this, I think you easily could have watched Picard and not seen this, and
absolutely,
it wouldn't hurt.
Yeah,
but
it's
good.
I
It's
find
good.
it
Little
more
extra background, but it just didn't feel Star Trek at all. I mean, and I get what it was. I mean, it's these two girls going to school and all that, but it was, the whole thing to me felt unnecessary.
Yeah, again, I think it was a teaser for the show. I think
precursor.
it just teed things up. I find it interesting that essentially they're using 150-year-old shuttle Type C shuttles as school buses. I found that kind of cool. Also, that we now know first contact day is April 5th, so we can all celebrate that now.
They've said that before.
Yeah, but I forgot. I guess I'd forgotten that.
And maybe you have a very different perspective because of what you do for a living, Todd, and your exposure to it. But it just, I didn't understand why the redheaded girl was being so mean to the other girl. It just made no sense to me.
It's a question I ask every day.
I also have 3 sons and no daughters, but the whole thing, I was just kind of scratching my head.
I work at a school that's grades 7 through 12, and every it's. Yeah.
The reality of life is that a huge percentage of kids are dicks. There's no doubt about it.
I will
That's
say,
just the way it is.
I appreciate your opinion on that. I will say the reality of life is that a child that is experiencing some sort of emotional unrest does not know how to channel that into a way other than meanness. Okay, and behind every mean girl I have ever encountered, and in 20 some odd years of doing what I do, there's been a lot of them. There's always something pretty sad there, and I think both of these kids were, I found this accurate. Both of these kids suffered a disappointment and were looking to lash out at somebody, and they picked the easy target, and that's how these things actually work. Bullies aren't happy kids. They're really not.
Absolutely. But there's a lot of them these days.
There are. Oh yeah, no, because there's a lot of
parents.
a lot of reasons for, kids not to be happy one way or another. But again,
anyway,
now I'm starting to feel how you guys feel when I talk about cable stuff.
There you go. So in addition to the short trek, there's a series of Picard comic books that are precursors to the series.
There's a Picard countdown series. 2 of the 3 issues are out so far, and
which I feel that the short trek is more is a seemingly so far is a much tighter tie-in to the more necessary. And I said that I thought the short trek was unnecessary, but the comic book so far, I've read 2 of the issues, feels completely unnecessary.
But it to me, well, I mean, you're introduced to Picard's caretakers. And you get to see their previous lives, and also you get to see that the Romulans are at the point where their sun went supernova, some of the Romulans are still being Romulans. These people didn't suddenly become all people worthy of being saved. They're still putting themselves above other races, and so I've read a lot of the Star Trek tie-in comics. I will say this one is probably a little hampered by having very tight guidelines that they can operate within. So, yeah, I'll agree with you. I think we've seen in 2 issues, we've maybe seen 1 issue worth of story.
Yeah, and it just feels like a story that we've seen. I mean, a million times before, where Picard goes on a mission, and the people that he's there to help aren't what they say they are, and they take him prisoner, and I just feel like I've seen that story over the course of Star Trek a dozen times.
It's a Star Trek story.
Yeah.
It falls within those guidelines.
Yeah,
so, but
cool. Well, Todd also had a good idea of there's obviously a number of characters that we see and are going to see. Certainly Picard, certainly Romulans as a whole. Data, who's sort of in this. We're going to see 7 of 9, and maybe we'll continue this when we dig into other stuff. But are there things what things could people see if they never saw Next Generation or anything that would help you get a sort of a background on some of these characters.
I think that,
It's
and I think
basically
also
about-
a background on who Picard is, because if you've never
Right.
seen Star Trek,
Yeah.
you might
Yeah,
not
yeah,
understand
yeah.
why
All of them.
There's
is
about
the way he is.
750 episodes of Star Trek, and it's pretty daunting to tell someone to go start watching all of that.
So why don't we go through them and each mention one? There'll probably be overlap.
So just
I have to
before we
say, I
go,
was happy.
I think there's a certain things that need to get established, and I think it's Picard himself. I think it's the Romulans, probably
I just
7
said
of
all
9, and what else? Data, right?
I just said all that.
He just said
Were you
all,
listening?
literally just said all of that.
Okay, good. And I didn't. So, okay.
I was happy to reference my 2-volume
Oh, okay.
Star Trek encyclopedia when I was doing this. I haven't broken this out in a long time, so that was good.
And when I went through, I was going through, I don't have the encyclopedias, but I was going through episodes and season and episode listings, and I forgot they made 26 episodes a season of this show. I forgot how many episodes there
Yes.
were.
did.
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy. It's crazy.
So okay, Picard. What do you think? Todd, why don't you say one? Barry, say one, and I'll say one.
I'm going to go for the low-hanging fruit. I'm going to say the best of both worlds, part 1 and 2. It's hard. I think it's hard to understand who he is without that. I don't think it's maybe the jumping off point, but I think it's
I don't think it's the first thing, but
I mean,
interesting.
we're not
It does make
necessarily
up a
going
lot of who he is.
chronologically, right? Because I agree.
no.
like,
So I mean, if we're going to say, yeah,
it's necessary, but it's not where I would start. But
yeah,
Where would you start?
I think Measure of a Man is where I would start.
That's Data, though.
that's Data.
But it's Picard
We're
too.
talking-
It's Picard defending the androids, isn't it? I mean,
in some ways, I honestly, I think I would, if I was going to go to really say core, probably Encounter at Farpoint. I mean,
I think as bad as that is,
yeah,
you have to do that. And I also think the first thing I wrote down was Tapestry. That's
on my list, but I did mine chronologically,
Yep.
and that was at season 6.
I
so.
think Encounter at Farpoint. I think. Well, I had 3. I mean, Encounter at Farpoint, Tapestry, and Chain of Command too. When he's
That's on my list.
I went
Prisoner?
best of both worlds because I think that has more long-term significance in who he is. But Chain of Command was my fallback there.
Well, and spoiler
and
alert.
these are meaningless to anybody. You're gonna have to look, if you're really gonna go along with any of this. You got to go look those episodes up.
Right, but
Yeah,
spoiler alert, because the episode 1 of Picard ends with a Borg cube, and so that's clearly going to be significant, and that's also why
That's why I was saying the best of both worlds, because that's going to be a trigger for him. But I also wondered, and I said, going back to Picard for just a moment, do you think he set them up with the Borg cube?
Interesting.
Because he's going to know where they are, right? These depopulated Borg cubes, and the Romulans need to go somewhere. I'm wondering whether he offered that up as a habitat.
I can't imagine that he would do that. That would be the last
think about
possible
it.
place.
It is they would be abandoned, and
So wait, the Borg
They should have
are
been
basically
destroyed, though.
extinct.
that's what I'm saying. So these are
From
basically
when?
dead
From-
hulks.
based
They
on
have
Voyager,
nowhere to
right?
go. It's anyways, we'll find out. But
Yeah, the reason, and like I said, the reason I went with Measure of a Man was because this seems to be, it's going to be Picard defending, sentient androids and this whole thing, and that was all about that.
I will say I can't think of a episode before that I think is extremely good. And I think that's a really good episode for both the characters.
That's a total Data episode, and it is a Picard.
It's both of them, and it's probably the best duo episode for the two of them. But I think you need to introduce them prior to that. to give it the weight that it needs.
Well, that's why you really need to see Farpoint, as bad as it is.
Yeah, you really kind of do. And they harken back to that.
I originally had a much longer list. I think I had like 15 episodes, and I whittled it down. And I started with Farpoint, and I ended with what the hell was the last one called? I just mentioned it before.
All Good Things?
All Good Things. And I ended up taking both of them off the list.
I don't think All Good Things, because I feel like that conflicts with stuff, because we're not sure, some was a dream, some was not, some was,
Yep, and that's why I ultimately took both of them off the list.
If the series had ended with All Good Things, if we hadn't gotten the films, okay, I would have gone with All Good Things, because it's closure. I skipped that in favor of First Contact.
I would totally. Yeah, yes. I would. First Contact does give you good Data, good Borgs, good Picard, later Picard. That is one of my favorite Star Trek movies of all.
Me too.
And phaser rifle fights. I mean, come on, It's like anytime you can pull those phaser rifles out of the rack, it's a good time.
The other Data thing I had was Offspring, where he builds his own dog.
I did as well,
because that's gonna have to tie in. I mean, they already mentioned it, but that's got to tie into this.
Yeah,
the fact that he called the painting daughter, I mean,
yes, yeah.
So here's one that I think is a little bit completely random, but I thought it was just a good non-space Picard episode that gives you a sense of what he's like when he's not on the ship, and that was Captain's Holiday. I don't know how that might tie into any of this, but it does give you...
that is one that people bring that up a lot.
That's the one with Vosh when he's on the planet doing the archaeology thing.
Yeah. That gives you... that or Family. It's one of those two.
Those are both on my list.
that give you the sense of who Picard is, other than...
when he's not being a starship captain.
In the maroon and black.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Also good choices.
I think you probably need to go to Voyager too with the Scorpion episode. Maybe Scorpion, or maybe one of the other 7 of 9 episodes.
No, I looked through those, and I actually I watched about 4 episodes of Voyager just because I went down this rabbit hole. I thought it was Scorpion. You really got to go to the next episode, which is called The Gift, which is where 7 is a Borg and becomes a human.
But isn't that the second part of... Isn't Scorpion 2 parts?
No, Scorpion Part 2, she still is a Borg throughout the whole thing.
Okay, so you're right then. It's got to be the one where she makes the transition.
Right,
it's called The Gift, and she's very... I distinctly remember watching that episode on TV, and it's Borgs, and I'm like, wait a second. That Borg, I think, is really hot, And she was.
And that's what you remembered.
I totally remember that, yes. But it is that next episode. And then there's they were... And not that I forgot this, but I watched that episode. I watched something called Human Error, where is really digging into 7 wanting to be more human. It's a really heavy 7 episode.
Yep.
And then I watched the finale, too. They were really... hardcore 7, a lot of
once she came on the show, yeah, for sure.
But that Gift episode is also where they're like, oh, hey Cass, we don't need you anymore, you're gonna explode into something, and
yeah, boy,
we don't need you.
They sent her out an airlock.
Was that the one where she was trying, when she was in the holodeck, like looking human and all that?
Which 7?
Yeah. Remember
the
one you were just talking about
was the one she was having all these fantasies trying to be more human.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, I have not watched any Voyager since it aired. I watched every single one at the time, but I have never gone back and revisited that. So
for this, just because I sort of, like I said, I went down this rabbit hole. I watched the 2-part finale. It's still good. That finale was actually pretty good. I think it's better than the Next Generation finale. They did a good job with that.
I seem to remember that. I will tell you the one thing though, the stuffing the relationship with her and Chakotay in there was weird.
But you want to know something? But if you go back to like much earlier, even in season 7, that's part of her fantasy.
Oh, I know that, but you know what it almost felt like? It almost felt like doing the Worf and Troy thing at the end of Next Gen, where it was like, okay, really? This is what you're doing now? Yeah.
Who can resist her? She's got some metal on her face.
I know, but
the rest is great.
So
another episode that I thought might be relevant, only because I've read that we're actually going to see Hugh, is I, Borg.
Yeah. No, I think that's important too. It also, there's, I think that's important. Movies, I gotta say, I mean, Nemesis for closure, for completeness, but I think First Contact is really the movie.
Yeah. It's the best Next Gen movie without a doubt. Anyway.
Oh, I think I think it's right up there with Wrath of Khan, and I mean that's my number 2. I think I've said that before.
Yeah, I think I've come around to that. I've seen that a couple times, and I honestly don't think I watched Nemesis this weekend. I don't think I've seen it since I left the theater.
I know I haven't,
and there's good reason for that. Yeah. There's just a lot there that can't be explained. In terms of the Romulans, how do you? What's the best way to address the Romulans? I mean,
well, I thought since you sort of want to look at Romulans in Next Gen era, I think the unification, it sort of gets into them having problems and not problems and trying to more humanize them a little.
I think the Defector, okay, because I feel like that really kind of shows the kind of society thing where everybody's, unification, they're trying to break it apart and they're trying to, but the Defector, it's like, you can't believe anybody, it's like all this stuff. And then that is really, to me, that's kind of like the modern, I think Spock is too much a distraction in unification, but I think the Defector was like pure Romulans, and it was enough to make you realize that these are just not legit players that you can deal with. I always go back to, in terms of introduction to them, I always go back to Balance of Terror, which isn't as relevant, but
it's tough because it's a whole different.
It is it is the introduction, and to that end, I got to say, at the end of Picard, when we're seeing the Balance of Terror ships flying around, just awesome. I really hope that the ugly ship that seems to be their ship gets blown up by episode 3, and they take over one of those old Romulan ships and fly that for the rest of the series, because that would make me happy.
I'm curious what they're going to do with 7. Is she married to Chakotay? What happened with that? That's a whole, are they going to dig into that at all?
Probably not.
Probably not. I do know Robert Picardo said he would be interested in coming back coming in for season 2.
Why wouldn't he be?
But still, I think it'd be pretty cool if they have the same medical hologram.
I don't see that.
Do a little digital work on him, make him look just like he did.
There wasn't a lot of humor in this, so and I'm not saying that as a negative, but that the Doctor hologram always came across very humor and goofy and. There's a lot of good stuff that you can. I mean, we've just rattled off 15 episodes probably, but there's a lot of good stuff in all of this, and there's also a lot of filler. So hopefully this was helpful for somebody if they were looking for a primer of, hey, what are the 10 things I should watch? This is a good list.
I read a bunch of people's lists online that were suggesting what episodes they would suggest. And I agreed with a number of them. Almost all of them had the Inner Light in there. And I think that's a great Patrick Stewart episode. I feel like it's
just a great episode of Star Trek, but I agree. I mean, it doesn't necessarily tell you a lot about Picard because it isn't the life he led. It's the life
Right.
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
he envisioned. But
People just like that because it's a whole different animal.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. So let us know. Hey, did you watch it? Did you like it? Are there shows that you think people should dig into? Okie dokie. So check all that stuff out. Any last thoughts? I have a last thought. If you really like Star Trek, I haven't looked at my Star Trek encyclopedias. Check these out. I think I got these on sale on Amazon years ago, but
Not that long
it is
ago.
about 30 pounds of books.
It's fantastic. It's 2 volumes, and it's everything is in there, and it's great.
Yeah, it's really everything you need to know.
so is it
check those
everything
out.
up
There's the
until Discovery? Obviously, Discovery's not in there, but is it everything up till that?
No, these are a few years old, right? These are
Yeah.
3 or 4 years old.
Okay.
So, but check those out. And thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Make it so.
Live long and prosper. Oh wait, wrong series.
Engage.
I actually one last thing. I did like that he named the dog number 1.
Oh my God, we forgot to talk about that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm hoping Riker is like, you named a dog number 1? What kind of thing is that?